My name is Rick Kubina. I am joined by the Senior Director of AI, none other than Dave Stevens. Dave, what a pleasure to be working with you on this webinar.
You've been going almost 10 years together now, so I'm excited to keep going with you, Rick. It's been a good time.
Absolutely. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm the Director of Research at CentralReach. And we're going to be talking to you about something today that we're looking to research, we're looking to promote, and we're looking to talk about.
From there, since I'm assuming some of you all, we didn't get that first question, but I'm assuming some of you all don't know exactly what AI is or just have a kind of a high level understanding. Rick's going to take us through just a little bit from his perspective what AI is, and we'll show some examples of what we're using it internally for. A lot of our team members are using it, kind of probably like in many of the same ways you all are, and then we'll go more in depth on some of these topics. So, Rick, it's all you.
Okay. This slide I put in there was actually generated by AI. And I gave AI a prompt, which this was ChatGPT. And if you have ChatGPT 4, you can ask it to draw a picture. And I said, draw this isn't the exact words that I used, but I basically said, draw a picture of what you think people feel about AI. And it pretty much, I didn't tell Dave about my prompt, but that poll is the two ends of it. Is AI going to dominate the world? How will the robots work? And you see people working in concert with this. And it's just a really whimsical picture when you look at it. But there's a lot. Let's just cut to the chase. Everybody's talking about AI, and you get people that are fearful of it on the one end, you get people that are really excited about it on the other end. And we're here to just talk about what is AI, where's it going, how could it be used in ABA. And I will just point this out. You can't stop where AI is, just like you couldn't stop the personal computer, or like you don't have to use it. What I mean by that, but however, more and more people are going to use it, and you're just going to see it helping us in different ways. And so that's just a little picture of AI. Next slide. So when we talk about AI, what we're getting at is this looks at, well, what is intelligence? In intelligence, simply put, is, if we ask what's the definition of intelligence, it's our ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. So that's human intelligence. Artificial intelligence, which again would be the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills, would mean that's being done artificially, and it's being done through these applications. So, AI, artificial intelligence, is simply intelligence, but not by humans. So if you're ever going to explain this to someone, that's how you explain it to them. So that's what artificial intelligence is. And artificial intelligence has been around for a long time. It just seems like it's been around for maybe a year or so. But people will go back to the advent of when ChatGPT stormed. What is that, a year, Dave,
That
or
was like
was it two?
November of 22. So going
Yeah,
on, yeah.
Yeah, so since then, people look at it, but it's been around much longer than that. But at least something that's commercially viable and something that people are uh, using quite a bit, I would say that marked the calendar. So, AI is all over the place. It's in our lives every day. If you use Netflix, there's a recommendation engine and there's some algorithm. If you have a smart car, if you have a smartphone, if you're like, hey Siri, what's the weather like today? Natural language processing. There's all of these different ways that AI is impacting us, and uh, it people who are in other fields, which we'll talk about later, using it, and it is just the tsunami that is overtaking everybody. And in fact, if you look at AI right now is the biggest wealth generator in the world. And the government is pouring lots of money into AI. Other governments are pouring lots of money into AI, and it is just this technology that's going to be massively transformative.
So here's an example of how our teams are using AI. And this, when we show it to people, they're kind of like, boom, wow, that's amazing. So who loves creating single case designs? You can.
Me.
I knew the answer to that one. But so here's an example prompt to one of, and this is a product called Julius. It's a data analysis tool that you can access through ChatGPT or directly. So this is Shannon. She's our editor-in-chief for CR Institute. She's like, I need to create examples of single case design graphs for master level students. And so when you talk to the AI, here's its output. Okay, let's start by creating a simple baseline. So this is its first pass with no prompts, with no guidance, with no instructions. And it created, it's a decent graph, but there's a lot of errors with that graph. So the next step was Shannon said, well, that's great, but let me give you some rules, right? So we're giving it some instructions now on top of that initial prompt. So phase change line should be solid black unless otherwise told. Phase change line should fall between two dates. Data paths should never cross and so on. So all the good things that go into a single case graphic. And so it's like, it's very helpful. These AI mimic human behavior very well because it's trained on all of your human language and verbal behavior. So it's like, thank you for providing guidelines. This is from the AI itself. It's just restating back what we told it. Phase change line should be black. Data path must not cross. Data path appearance should be black. Line styles and markers can vary to indicate differences. And so it says these rules will ensure clarity and consistency. So a few iterations later, it wasn't ready. I can show you the whole process, but there's a few iterations through this. And at the end, based on that training, this instruction that we're giving the AI, all Shannon had to do is say, please use that information to create another graph of this type with different data for interpretation. And here is now a very well constructed graph. We haven't evaluated this against APA standards, but I kind of have the graphing chart guru here on this call. It's pretty good, right? I'm sure he can find things that he would change, but it's amazing.
No.
No? Wow. That's amazing. So here's an example of how AI can help us just in our everyday lives. This probably would have taken, if you were messing around with Excel or Google Sheets or whatever you do, this could be hours of work to get your graph to look right. And I know it is because I've tried to do that, and I've worked with many other behavior analysts that have tried to do the same thing. But here in a 15, 20-minute session, working collaboratively with our AI, in this case, Julius, which is using OpenAI's ChatGPT, GPT-4 under the hood, was able to produce this graph. And now it is an instruction that anybody can use. So this thing has been trained, right? It's been taught a skill, and now it can use that skill to provide us value. And so this saves, if you're making a lot of these, this could save an awful lot of time. So this is just an example. If you haven't played around with it, definitely go out and start playing with these things. When we show these type of examples to people, kind of blows their minds if you haven't played with these. They are very capable. So that gets us to our first secret word for the webinar for the CEU. And again, you'll get instructions on the CEUs at the end, but the secret word is replicator. I don't know where we got these. Did AI generate these words for us?
No, I came up with them.
You stole them from Star Trek.
This is totally a Star Trek theme. So if any of you are like, oh, these seem like they're from Star Trek, guilty as charged.
Secret word number one, replicator. And you'll get CEU instructions at the end. All right. So AI at CentralReach. So before we do that, I want to talk about a little bit about how AI is being brought to bear on many of the problems in just general healthcare. And I'm going to show you a video from CNBC a few months ago, which I just think is it's an amazing, quick. Well, I'll let you judge, but it's a great.
Roughly 60% of doctors in family medicine, pediatrics, and internal medicine say they are, guess what, burned out. A big pain point, according to many, filling out medical records, where now there is an AI app for that. And I want to talk to Bertha Coombs, who joins us with a look at how that technology is helping doctors happily and finally in the office. Bertha.
Yeah, and not just in the office, Andrew. Of course, when you go to see your doctor, most of the time, chances are, you see them sitting at the computer, typing notes while you're talking to them. That's going into your electronic health record. The thing is, a lot of them don't finish up until later at home during what doctors call pajama time. Microsoft's Nuance unit has an AI app that could put pajama time to rest.
You don't look like you feel good today.
Dr. Trishella Johnson-Foy starts patient visits by pulling out her phone.
It listens in on our visits so that I can pay more attention to you. Are you comfortable with me using it?
Using Nuance's DAX app has freed Foy from typing when she's seeing patients. The AI program writes her patient summaries for her, which has freed her from
pajama time, which should be the time where you're getting ready to wind down and go to bed. We're usually still charting and noting and doing things that are going to enhance the life of the patient, but not necessarily our own quality of life.
At Baptist Health in Jacksonville, harnessing generative AI programs to help doctors and nurses fight burnout is a top priority.
There's new economies of scale and economies that healthcare will be able to get into leveraging AI because you simply, because you eliminate all the administrative redundancy and bureaucracy overhead and you allow folks to work top of license.
Using AI to reduce administrative tasks could help hospitals cut total costs by 5 to 11% in the next 5 years, according to a National Bureau of Economic Research study. For physician groups, up to 8%, and for health insurers, 7 to 10%, though the upfront investment isn't cheap.
It cost me X, but I just made my patients a whole lot happier and my physicians a whole lot more productive. Well, there's an answer right there by itself.
But about that productivity, Dr. Foy says it shouldn't mean more work. Pajama time is now reserved for time with her family.
This is about the doctor having a quality of life that they deserve, because we're people too.
So that is just a phenomenal segment, and there'll be a link, I think, afterwards. There's so many parallels with that, and I think in ABA, you know, there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into maintaining compliance with, with the regulatory and insurance requirements on documentation, from your session notes to, the claims that you submit, and, every facet of ABA service delivery. There's a big documentation component, whether it's from the assessment side of things or the developing the treatment plan, changing the treatment plan, documenting all the data, working with the caregivers and the parents and so forth. And you all have to capture all that data. And so, that's where CentralReach helps you do that. But you still have to put in all the data and you have to move data around and things like that. And so we think there's a lot of parallels with what's happening in the medical world. Now that segment, I think, was from October of last year. So they've come a long way since then. There's a lot of just parallels though. And Rick, a couple of things that stood out to me from that video was being able to operate at top of license. I love that. I love that where, if you're a BCBA, you're a clinical director and you're at home, you're working on all this kind of, just basic documentation stuff, like that's arguably not you're the top of your license. You should be working on hard cases and helping people make breakthroughs and things like that. But if that time is taken up doing all these compliance things and documentation, you can't spend time at the top of your license. And so I love that phrase and probably steal it moving forward. The other is talk to any behavior analysts and others, is like you do a lot of work that you don't get paid for. And this, we know burnout is very important, is a very big problem in our field, both for our BCBAs and our RBTs. And I think there's a lot we can do to help alleviate some of that burden by getting rid of or at least automating a lot of that administrative burden. And, this is the first in a series of webinars where we're going to be talking about these things. So this is kind of our introduction. We have a lot more to come. So definitely stay tuned. But we do think that AI can help us unlock more inherent power of behavior analysis, right? Like we do think that we can reduce the administrative burden. We can help you reach higher for your clients, help your businesses do better, increasing margin, and which is already very thin, and just help you be healthier overall to help you basically serve more, of your clients that need help. You all have wait lists, and there's just a lot of pressure on all sides of things. The key though for us, and this is kind of goes into some of our approach, is that we have to make sure that the proper guide rails are in place. We're going back to that poll where some of us are fearful, or some of us are in the middle. Those are all valid fears. Absolutely. It's a tool, and tools can be used for good or for harm. But the way we're looking at it at CentralReach is that we have to make sure we have the proper guardrails in place. We're not just going to ship stuff that doesn't, that tries to replace the technician or tries to replace the clinician or tries to replace the expertise or decision making. But it's more of a supportive application just to help you do more. Do more of that top of license kind of work. So we need guardrails. We need reliability checks. It has to be inclusive processes, and then obviously very strongly grounded in ethics of ABA.
Before you get into that second secret word, there was a question that I think is appropriate, and you can take a stab at answering it. If someone asks, can you explain how ABA is HIPAA compliant or AI is HIPAA compliant? Maybe the question is, are these AI devices HIPAA compliant?
Yeah, so that's actually a very great question, and we will talk a little bit about that towards the end when we go over our framework. But we have an actual enterprise relationship with OpenAI. In that we have a BAA signed with them. There are 7 or so AI tools that we are able to use that have a zero data retention policy, meaning they don't retain any data that we send to them. Additionally, they don't use our data for training. So we had to spend a lot of money to get that kind of enterprise relationship, and that's why our applications of using AI are going to be covered under that for HIPAA as well as and as part of our SOC 2 process. But if you're using something like Gemini and you just go to Google or what used to be called Bard, or you go to OpenAI and just pay the $20, like you're not getting that level, that HIPAA compliant level. You're not getting your data is actually being used to help train. So it's very important, just like any web software or any software you use where you're sending data somewhere, you need to be very careful on what data you're sending. So if you're sending, hey, here's an assessment for my client, and you just upload the PDF, and if it's not redacted, like you are sharing privileged healthcare information with that entity, and you might not be able to do so. But they put the onus on you, just like with anybody, any other provider. Like if you use Gmail for your mail, you can't send, protect PHI information through that unless you have that BAA in place and you're following those controls. So anything we do at CentralReach, and we'll go in a little bit more detail about this, is all governed by our internal security council. We have a compliance officer and a team that goes through. We have a data by design, privacy by design documentation that we use for any of these types of initiatives that we're kind of going through. So great question. You have to be careful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a great response. Thank you.
Thanks. I forgot what I said. No. All right.
You just blacked out and gave an
I
answer.
blacked out again. What secret word time?
Yes, it's secret word time.
All right. Communicator is the secret word number 2. Communicator. Computer. Is that the communicator? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. We all have communicators. They're called iPhones now.
Or Android.
Or Androids, yes.
Secret word number 2 is communicator. And again, CEU instructions will be at the end. All right. So that's a good lead into the ethics question or conversation around using AI within ABA from an ethical perspective.
Yeah. This is all of us who have BCBAs or BCBA-Ds, or we have to, I mean, just in general, we should be attending ethics seminars, but we have to do it if we have one of those. And so you all probably have a good understanding of what do we mean by ethics and ethical implications. Ethics are simply these moral principles that govern behavior. And we have these ethics, and ethics are challenging because it's not like this is ethical, this is unethical. I mean, sometimes it's true, but other times it's harder to understand where do you sit on this. And I think it's always easy to just start off with those big different, the differentiations between, okay, this is clearly non-ethical, this is clearly ethical. Because if you start there, that's your compass, and you can move from there. This is another picture that I asked AI to write, and I can't remember my prompt, but AI said, okay, this is a symbolic representation of ethics, and it features a scale that balances compassion and materialism, and it's overseen by a figure of impartiality set against a backdrop of societal impact. I mean, come on, AI, you're really going deep on that. I mean, look at that thing. So I guess compassion is the physical heart, and materialism is, I don't know, almost looks like Bitcoin there. But AI is certainly something that, as it's new, and this is true like any technology. I mean, Dave, you gave a great answer when you were talking about HIPAA compliance, and I could steal part of that for, like, with any technology. Should you be using email to communicate about a client, or should be putting sensitive information out there? So whether it's AI, whether it's email, whether whatever technology we put in there, we could look at that and say, how could it be used for good? How can it be used for bad? I mean, there are clearly cases where you could do things, and unfortunately, you've probably heard these stories where someone is like using AI in a very unethical manner, and that's going to happen. But we need to understand, what do we have this technology? How do we use it for good? And how can it be used for bad? With AI, many people are so excited about it because what you're seeing, just like that clip, it is helping people do these mundane tasks that is just freeing them up. Sitting down, listening to someone in keyboarding notes, that takes time. If you're using AI, this natural language processing, and all of a sudden it's being done for you and you have that transcript, it's right there. That is an incredible time savings. And of course, that's just step one. There's also step 2, 3, 4 that can be brought forward. Like AI can do all of these incredible things, that it could look for themes, it can give you really good summarizations. That's what AI is good at. And that can help us be more efficient, help us be more accurate. And of course, this all gets to productivity. And we are all in a specific industry. We're applied behavior analysts, and we help people through various means. And what we want to look at is, how can AI not just benefit society, but now let's start focusing in on how can AI specifically help us as a field.
So here's two good questions that just came in. Well, one was prior to it regarding health insurance payers accepting AI for documentation, but the second one, and I think they're kind of related. What's an example of being used in behavior analysis that's unethical? And I'd actually like to take a stab at answering both of those. So, I've seen this question a lot. Will insurance companies accept these notes? And I'm going to say, without us talking to the insurance companies, which we don't, yes. I think they will, because they're already doing it in the healthcare space. And the reason why they're doing it in the healthcare space is because the AI is not just submitting those things. The AI is presenting them for the doctor to review, edit, accept, change, modify, and then submit as their own. So if you've all used spelling check, grammar check in Microsoft Word, or Grammarly to help you write something, that's really all AI, or at least in our perspective and how we intend on deploying AI, is going to help you. It's not going to do it for you. It is going to assist you in doing it. It's going to maybe suggest things you might have forgotten to do. It'll give you some starting points where you can start writing. So maybe it does 80% of the work for you, but your technicians, your clinicians still have to accept that information, modify that, make changes if it's inaccurate. You are ultimately responsible for that note. So I think the answer to the question about insurance is yes. But that's not us. I think our industry has to come and make sure that that's accurate. Like APBA, CAST, BHCOE, and others have to make sure that these things are going to be accepted. And what are those thresholds that have to be met? I.e., did the human review it and accept it as their own? Or the unethical way is, hey, I'm just going to let AI write this treatment plan for me, and I'm not going to review it. I'm going to hit submit. It's pretty much like that from an ethical perspective. How many people have ever, if you take a treatment plan and you copy it for your next client, is that unethical? Because it's not really individualized if it's coming from a base of things, if you haven't really tailored it. So I think, again, it can be used very easily unethically as well as ethically. And it's, again, a tool, as Rick was saying, and we have to choose to use it in an ethical perspective, within an ethics framework that we have in ABA. And we have to make sure that, as we use these tools, we're agreeing with those outputs, we're making those modifications, we're accepting them, and they are now becoming our voice.
Yeah, just to add on to the second question that you answered, there are documented cases, unfortunately, many documented cases of insurance fraud. People say that they delivered a service and they didn't deliver a service. You all could probably share stories about where that this is true. Likewise, with AI, you could say, AI, generate a summary of, I worked with client X, this is what their symptoms are, and I did just generate all the notes. AI will do that for you. But that's just like insurance fraud. That's incredibly unethical. AI will do it. AI is just this computer software, but it's how we are using it And that's where the ethics are. So if the person is telling AI to do something, and then you use that information to do something that's unethical, that's where I think we need to look at what are the instances that AI could be used unethically. How do you put guardrails in there? How do you assure that these things aren't happening?
Great questions. So, and that's actually part of, there's a lot of bias that can be inherent in these. It's the bias can be in how we use the tool, right? The bias can be in how it was actually trained. So, when we look and you can read all kinds of articles on both sides of this, is that, these models can be highly biased because of the training data that's used. And so one thing we didn't point out earlier in how AI works is these are all just mathematical statistical algorithms that predict the next word that's most likely to come based on the previous words that have been generated. So it takes your question, it turns it into this really complex mathematical array. It's like a huge Excel sheet with 1,500 columns of numbers. They call it a vector. And takes that number and it does a whole bunch of matrix multiplication, math that tries to understand like what do all these things mean? Not mean, but what do they look like similarly in my training data set? And so if your training data set has bias in it, if your training data set has, it doesn't have, if it's either been purposely biased towards a particular direction or it's missing data necessary to help answer, it's just going to kind of default to what's the closest. So it's very important that we understand like what's the training data set that was used to make this, who is kind of in charge of instructing the training process, right? If Rick teaches me about learning how to chart, I'm going to learn it one way, standard acceleration charts. If I had somebody else, I'd learn it a different way, perhaps. And it's the same thing with AI. It really depends. And so, we have, and we'll go a little bit more into our group. Actually, this is a great lead into how we're approaching it. Is how do we ethically and safely apply AI to ABA? And so we have an amazing team, I'll go into this in a minute, that's helping us kind of craft our own internal guidelines and processes and checklists and compliance documentation. So we call it responsible AI for behavior analysis. It involves transparency, a values alignment, responsive modeling, data security, inclusivity. And so transparency is like, if I ask AI a question like, what is a man? I want to know like, where did it get the information to answer that question, right? So transparency and sort of I can't even say that word, but transparency of where the information is coming from and where the output came from. So that's critical to these things. It's like citations in a paper, right? So if you make a statement in a research paper, you have to have a citation that says where that came from. And we're applying that to everything we do in AI. Values alignment. Does this align to the values of ABA? Right? Does our outputs, do they align with those standards? And we have a group of people that are helping us within the community, define those and measure our outputs against those values. Responsive modeling. We know everybody here on this call, ABA is a very individualized service, right? So are our models being responsive to the needs of the individual and not just the client, but perhaps even the technician or, the triad of the BCBA, the RBT, or the technician and the, or I guess even more with the caregivers in place. Is it taking that context in mind when it is answering questions or providing, outputs based on a certain instruction? We touched just in this a little earlier about data security. We're SOC 2 compliant. Everything we do, it has to be HIPAA compliant. We have a lot of internal checks that we have to go through before we share data externally. We have BAs with everybody. And we go, it's probably the central tenet of everything we do at CentralReach is for data security purposes. So, we don't take these things lightly. And then inclusivity. Are we getting, all of those sort of differing sort of perspectives being included in these outputs? And so this goes to the bias of the training data sets, and teasing out that, but not teasing out, but putting guardrails around those biases. And, we know where these models are doing well. We know in what situations they don't do well. There might be even instances where the, GPT-4 from OpenAI does much better, than Anthropic's Claude 3 or Claude 2. But in certain cases, Claude 3 is much better. So we want to make sure we're using the right model to get the best outcomes. I don't know if we had any questions pop up that we needed to do there.
Yeah, we got a couple questions. One asks if AI is being integrated into CentralReach and what's the timeline. We can table that question since we're going to get to it. So that's a good question, but we're going to get to that. The other question, it was back to safety and said, we know about HIPAA, but is there anything aspects of AI and ABA that could be regulated by the FDA?
I think, when the Biden administration put out the executive order about all the agencies to come up with their own AI regulatory compliance frameworks, I think there is obviously a chance that the FDA comes in with guidelines on the use of AI. I do see it though being more, and again, this is just from my experience, it's going to be more geared towards the decision-making aspects of using AI. Especially around like diagnoses and what should come next in a treatment plan and things like that. I think, if there's a saying I love is that if you met one person with autism, you met one person with autism. It's like personalized medicine, something that works for Rick might not work for me. And I think the same thing goes with those that we serve, our clients and their families. So, I think it's very important that we recognize the limitations of AI and how it can help on decision-making frameworks and so forth. Because again, the bias in those models is much more sort of critical to get out than the bias in saying, "Hey, summarize this table of data for me." Right? One is very objective, the other can be very subjective based on those inputs. So I think the regulatory body will sort of grow in terms of their not grow, but it'll mature with their standards. Time will tell for sure.
Good question.
Very good questions. Okay. So next, Rick, why don't you talk about the subject matter experts that we have on the team?
Yeah, you can see that we have a number of people, and these are all behavior analysts with different career experience, different degrees, different places that they come from, and all of us are looking at, how can we contribute to these models? How can we help test them out? How can we work with Dave? And as we'll talk about later about some of the things that we're doing, especially with Carrie, how can we continually optimize and improve what we plan on offering? So maybe some of you know some of these folks, but we have a very good body of people with behavior analytic expertise for many years that have their eyes on the prize, so to speak. We also have a scientific advisory board. The scientific advisory board is another group of people that are very diverse in their thinking, and they have a lot of different experience working with being in autism, IDD care, behavior analysis, just across the board and technology. And the scientific advisory board will meet and we discuss these broad, overarching currents of what's going on in the field. And of course, AI is something that we are spending lots of attention because we have to spend attention on that. So we have this internal team that is looking at AI, contributing to AI. Then we have this external team, other than myself and Jim Partington. We have people who are external to CentralReach. We have another member that's going to be joining us that's not on this picture, but all of these folks are from outside, and they're meant to help advise CentralReach, to help give more information so that there's a perspective that's not just the group think, but also people being able to give us thoughts, ideas, concerns from the outside.
That's great. So we'll last section here, the healthcare applications of AI. And I guess before I do that, there's a question that came in that we can take is, what are your thoughts on AI actually fighting burnout? So as we saw in the video, and if you're late, there's a good video segment of using AI in doctors' offices about how it helps with the burnout. Now, if your organization then chooses to sort of put on more caseloads, above and beyond the heavy caseloads you have today, which are not necessarily in alignment with the ethical guidelines of ABA, right? So it says BCBA, and I'm going to maybe be wrong here, but something like 13 to 15 is a caseload for a BCBA without a BCABA in place. If you're already well past that, like that's just a problem that, unfortunately technology does help exacerbate and makes it easier to put more on. So, that caseload is predicated on the fact that 5% of all the RBT's hours have to be supervised with you, and so I can't really speak to that. Like that's an internal organization, and maybe if that company that you work for is doing that, you might need to look elsewhere if possible. But from the we work with a bunch of behavior analysts, both in some of our betas that we do, as well as internally. Some of our behavior analysts still carry caseloads. We have over 50 behavior analysts in the company at CentralReach. And a lot of them, that we speak with, these tools help them operate better at the top of their license. And again, I go back to that CNBC segment that we just watched, is that, if you're an experienced BCBA and, you don't know who needs what help from you, and you don't really have a good understanding of where you need to focus with what RBTs, and everything seems to be always on fire. I do think that these tools are going to it's going to help behavior analysts be a lot more I guess regimented or predictable, or have a better plans on where to spend their time and where they're needed most. And so I do think it helps alleviate some of that burnout. I can't alleviate all. Some of those are organizational functions that you have to address. But from a burnout perspective, if these tools help you do the administrative burdenous tasks, and you can freeze up your time to focus more on doing the work that got you into the field in the first place, then I think that is a good thing. Again, I don't know that it can fix a system where it's too much is being put on your plate.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good answer. And burnout is real. Burnout has a very insidious effect on an organization, on people's lives. And we think, again, maybe we're techno optimists here, Dave, but we think AI can be used in a way that can really help reduce that burnout and enhance the quality of people's jobs and the well-being. And if AI is done in a way thoughtfully, I think, again, it can be done. And you see instances where this is being done in other fields. And we're just at the very beginning of all of this. And, us leading the way and looking at how can this be done. Like, I'm personally very excited about this. So, some of these questions you're asking are very good, very forward thinking. But at this point, we need to start doing some testing. We need to get this out there. And then in the future, we'll be able to answer some of these questions with data.
Yeah, that's great. So just and then we'll get into Q&A and talk about some of our future timelines and what we're working on. Although it's going to be a little light for those that are asking, like, when are we releasing everything? But we have a nice roadmap that we will start sharing after this. But this is an actual research article based on that segment, that CNBC segment. And I don't know if it's exactly the same sort of group that was in the segment that's in this. I don't think it is. But there was a large study done with many, thousands of doctors using what they call AI scribes, or session narrative summaries. And this is related to one of the questions in the chat right now. So this was published just recently, the end of last month, and the link is here, and it'll be in the notes as well. But ambient artificial intelligence scribes to alleviate the burden. So the early results are promising. So this is one of the graphs. I just kind of picked this out, that we're talking about pajama time, and this shows that on the bottom below 0 is less decrease, and above is a larger decrease in these four areas that they measured. So pajama time, so a large decrease above board for those doctors, meaning it was doing more for them in their working hours. And then it shifted basically everything other than the time outside scheduled hours, which you could include that must have been an emergency or something that happened there. And it's all in the article, in the research article. So this is showing promise that it is actually reducing that administrative burden. Now, again, if it's an organization that's just going to kind of pile on more work, that's a different problem, right? That's not the tools problem. That's just, that's an organizational issue that needs to be addressed by the leadership. But there's amazing sort of research already being published within the medical world that we hope that we can replicate, and we will replicate here within ABA. And a lot of our the work that we're doing and we have a lot of working projects in place. So I'm only going to speak about one of them today. We're going to tie every one of them to research. So Rick is leading research efforts with our beta customers on these. We're doing a lot of pre-measurement, both on the metrics, the KPIs, if you will, of time savings and quality measures, as well as social validity studies around these. And we'll be doing posts and publishing that in journal articles. So a lot more to come there. And another area that the AI was very good at doing, and again, this takes a lot of work to get AI to do this. We've been working on some of these things for quite some time, but almost all of these, from bias, hallucination, consistent, synthesize, and so forth, all get 5 out of 5. But you can see there in the top, accurate and thoroughness of these summary qualities. And this is why I think human in the loop is going to be is so important to these tools, or the use of these tools, is that they're not always completely accurate, and they can only be as good as the data they're being fed. And they might not be as thorough because, again, if they don't have the context, they can't actually do the job. So if the system doesn't have the data, the AI can't do it. It can't answer your question. It can't do the summary as you could if you're a human. So I think this is a kind of a telling graphic that says it's very important that if you're using any type of AI tools, that you are ultimately responsible for that output. It wasn't the AI that did it. It was you that did it because you instructed the AI to give you that information. So just as if I could fabricate, medical fraud by myself without using AI, I can also use AI to do that. So again, accuracy and the thoroughness, have to be they have to be on your shoulders to make sure that these tools are giving you what you need, and that when you hit that submit button, that's your voice. That's you that said whatever the AI helped you write. But this was very, very telling. This study is actually amazing to read and gives us sort of great hope about the ability of AI to increase operational efficiencies within ABA, as well as, I think, help us reach better and higher clinical outcomes for those we serve. A lot more to come there for sure. And there's a couple questions. Is there anything we should look at, Rick?
Where are you at on your slides?
We're almost done. So we're going into
okay. Well, let's answer these at the end. Let's get through the slides.
Right. Secret word number 3. And now it's very telling where this comes from. This tricorder. The tricorder. Is that even I guess that is a real word now. There was like an X Prize compared to somebody to build a tricorder. I wonder if that actually
was.
Assuming since we don't
I think
have
someone came up with it.
Yeah, but since we don't actually have it, it must not have actually worked that well.
Yeah.
But maybe it'll be in a future phone. Who knows? Tricorder is the secret word number 3. All right, so before we get into the Q&A, a lot of you asking, CR Mobile is actually getting an AI boost. So we have a newly launched CR Mobile. We completely rewrote it. I think we released it earlier this year, late last year. Not exactly sure the timeline. But we are actively adding generative AI-powered session summaries. So the idea is if you take all of your data through CR Mobile, at the end, it will do a draft of a session note summary where your technician and clinicians will have the ability to edit, correct, add, adjust, give us a thumbs up and thumbs down, rate that. We'll have a webinar specifically about this when the time gets closer. And we'll be monitoring those outputs. You'll be able to see all those outputs in the back end of what's going in and out. And we'll be tuning that over time. So where we are right now is we are actively seeking customers that want to beta this with us. So test this out in a very controlled environment to make sure that we're on target. We've done a lot of work on our side from starting with our proof of concepts through our alpha period, where we're basically reprocessing a bunch of session data and evaluating the session summaries. And we're using our clinical team and our scientific advisory board to help with that evaluation process and those frameworks. So we have a wait list. It's already getting pretty full. So if you want to join that, there'll be a link, I believe, at the end, as well as that QR code will get you onto the form. We ask that you just fill that out. We won't be able to serve everybody. It's going to be very limited and controlled. And then in order to use this, you will have to be using CR Mobile to collect that data. So we're not putting it on the web at this time. And that'll be something we decide to do in the future if it makes sense. But CR Mobile is the future of our data collection platform, at least from the technician standpoint, and that's where this feature will be released. Okay, so I'm going to take a couple questions. So what are tools that you recommend? We recommend CentralReach. If you're going to use other tools, if you're going to use other tools, you absolutely must make sure you're not sharing PHI unless you have a BAA in place, and that data is covered by HIPAA. So some other tools that our team uses are ChatGPT, Claude from Anthropic, and there's a bunch of plugins and derivative products on there. So those are pretty performant. But again, it can take a lot of trial and error to get them to actually give you the answers that you're seeking.
Let me also add to that. When you say what tools are you using, and that's a really broad question, you can use AI to do so many things. You could use it for music, social media, podcasting, marketing. There's like thousands of tools. So I'll just share with you all one of the sites that I like. It's called futuretools.io. If you go to futuretools.io, you'll see this incredible list, all kinds of different AIs. So that's like a general thing, like if you just want to use AI in your life. But as Dave said, as we use what tools you're going to use in ABA, you're going to see some coming directly right out of CentralReach.
Another question was, how does CentralReach assist in medical professionals with barely any technology experience? That is not something that we do, and I highly recommend if you are a sort of if you need more help there, that you invest in the training and understanding of the technology. Like it only gets more technology impacted from here. Like our society gets more technology dependent from here, and it's well worth taking some online courses, YouTubes, and so forth to better understand how to use these technologies, just like you did to learn ABA in the first place. And then the next question is like, what's the future of CR? We have a multitude of AI projects that are in the works, whether they're either in sort of the getting ready to be in the production pipeline that gets shipped in our roadmap, or things that we're doing proof of concepts or alpha testing with. We're very excited about what's to come, and we hope you will as well. But I can't share any more details of that roadmap until we're kind of closer to launching that. I will say though, if you get involved in some of our betas, we're going to be leaning on our customers to help validate these ideas and these products, through their development life cycle. So if you want to go on that journey with us, absolutely sign up for this one. Start with our session narratives, and it'll give you a shoe in. We can't work with everybody. We have a few thousand customers and organizations that depend on us. And so we just need to work with people that want to work with us and even participate in some of that research that Rick is working on. So again, we'd love to work with everybody, but too much is too much. So we need to just kind of pick and choose and make sure we're moving forward very methodically.
Yep.
So that's questions, and I think we've done a pretty good job answering questions. But if you do have some that you don't want to interrupt us with, please by all means post those now. I'll leave this going for a few minutes, and then I'll post kind of the final slide, which will just talk about the CEU instructions, which you will get after this, as well as when you'll get a recording of this video. There are going to be a lot more of these sessions in the future as we get closer to demonstrating some of the things that we're working on, and as we get more concrete plans on the timelines of things, which I'll just speak to that roadmap. Like we're being very, very, very careful on when we think something's ready. Like if it doesn't meet an internal litmus test by our clinical team that we think something is ready from an ethical perspective and a responsibility perspective, it's not going to go out. And so, these types of applications more so than just normal functionality, like, hey, I want this button to do this thing. Those are very deterministic, and those are very like, okay, when you press this button, it does these things. If anybody's used any of these AI tools, you know that the same prompt with the same data you can get, that you put in 1 minute, you put in it again, it comes back completely different, so they're not necessarily deterministic. So our teams spend a lot of time making sure that the inputs and outputs are consistent, and go through, this whole evaluation framework that we have. So, and sometimes it's hard to predict when we're going to meet those thresholds of quality and accuracy and, ethical, the ethical considerations. So, I would love to be able to promise things at certain times, but it's the nature of the beast right now that it's hard to do so. I will say though, however, the CR Mobile session notes, we are planning to release that in beta by the end of April. So it is very close, and we're eager to work with you on that rollout. I'm not sure when general availability would be. We're hoping to be 30 to 60 days after we go out to beta. But again, we just want to make sure that we're on target with what we hope it can do. So it doesn't seem like there's any more questions. So from a reminder, we're about 3 minutes to go. So just immediately after webinar, you're going to receive an email, which will give you those CEU instructions. If you you'll sign up, you take those, the CEU will be available in CR Institute. You enter your 3 secret words, and that completes your attendance verification. And then at the end, when we end this webinar, which will be shortly, unless there's any questions, there's going to be a short survey, and we'd love your feedback to help us guide our future webinars. And I know we're probably a little light on some of those details of our roadmap, but we thought we needed to get this foundational webinar done first. And this is just the beginning of a series as we work to roll out these tools to you all to, again, help you hopefully increase operational efficiencies in your businesses and just help you serve more clients and then hopefully help them reach higher. So I think with that, thank you all for attending. Thank you for spending your time with us. And do fill out that, get on that wait list if you're willing to work with us on some of these beta products.